So today, guys, we are covering a story from Bradford. At the centre of this clandestine realm stood Johnny Daniels, a man whose name sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to cross him. Johnny was the younger brother of Javaz Daniels, a notorious mobster who held sway over Bradford's underworld with an iron fist. But Johnny was no mere shadow of his brother. He was a force to be reckoned with in his own right. From a young age, Johnny had been groomed for a life of crime. Growing up on the unforgiving streets of Bradford, he learned early on that in this world, weakness was a luxury he could ill afford. So he honed his skills, mastering the art of intimidation and violence with a cold precision that left no room for doubt. By the time he reached adulthood, Johnny had become a respected figure in Bradford's criminal underworld. His name was whispered in darkened alleyways and smoky backrooms, spoken with a mixture of reverence and fear. In the years of the 2000s, Johnny Daniels carved out his legacy with bullets and blood. He was a serious figure, a force to be reckoned with, and an enforcer. June 2007 brought with it a chilling wave of violence to the streets of Bradford, as the shadows of the underworld cast their long reach over the city. At the centre of this storm was James Fletcher, a close friend to the Daniels brothers, whose life would be forever changed by a brazen attack that would ignite a feud of epic proportions. In his flat in Homewood, Bradford, when James Fletcher found himself staring into the barrel of a gun, the cold steel pressed against his temple, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. Two men, their faces concealed by balaclavas, had stormed into his flat with murder in their eyes, their intentions clear and deadly. The first blow came swift and merciless, as an iron bar crashed against James's skull, sending waves of pain radiating through his body. But James, fueled by a primal instinct for survival, fought back with all the ferocity of a wounded animal, lashing out with a fury born of desperation. In the chaos that ensued, the deafening roar of gunfire pierced the air, a deadly symphony of violence that threatened to consume them all. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The masked hitman had put the gun to James Fletcher's head and pulled the trigger. But the gun had jammed. James Fletcher had punched him, and he had been shot in the leg while trying to free the gun. For the men who had come to silence him were no ordinary thugs. They were the hired hands of Meggie Khan, a notorious mobster whose reach extended far beyond the confines of the city. Meggie Khan, a name whispered in hushed tones, a figure of fear and reverence in equal measure, had been nursing a grudge against James Fletcher ever since their fateful encounter outside a club. James had got the better of Meggie in their fight. The failed attempt on James Fletcher's life reverberated through the criminal underworld like a thunderclap, fracturing alliances and igniting old grudges with a ferocity that defied reason. And caught in the crossfire of this deadly game of retribution was none other than Meggie Khan, a formidable presence whose ties to the Daniels brothers ran deep. But despite their shared bloodline, the bonds of family proved no match for the tempest of vengeance that raged within the hearts of those who sought justice for James Fletcher. And in August of 2007, Johnny Daniels, the gunman whose name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies, took matters into his own hands. With a MAC-10 submachine gun in hand, Johnny descended upon the streets of Bingley, where Meggie Khan's girlfriend lay unsuspecting in her home. In a blaze of fury, he unleashed a hail of warning shots, the crackling of gunfire echoing through the night like a harbinger of doom. But fate, it seemed, had other plans, as Meggie Khan himself became the unwitting target of Johnny's wrath. Struck down by a bullet to the abdomen, he suffered grave injuries, his body torn apart by the merciless onslaught of vengeance. For James Fletcher, it was a moment of reckoning, a chance to even the score. James Fletcher, his uncle Christopher, and Raymond Daniels found themselves thrust into the spotlight of suspicion, accused of conspiracy to murder, in the wake of the botched retaliation against Meggie Khan. But in a twist of fate, justice prevailed, as the courts cleared their names in the absence of conclusive evidence. leaving the truth shrouded in the shadows of uncertainty. August 2009. Johnny Daniels and 3 others were jailed for a total of 84 years for their roles in the torture, abduction, and murder of Bradford businessman Teddy Simpson. Anthony Davies of Lloyd's Drive, Low Moor, Bradford, and Darren Martin of Markfield Avenue, Low Moor, were locked up for life after a jury convicted them of murder. Davies, described by the judge as taking pleasure in his physical strength and the violence that came with it, will stay behind bars for at least 35 years. Martin, said to be Davies' subordinate, at his beck and call, must serve at least 24 years. Johnny Daniels of Cutler Heights Lane, Bradford, an organiser of the robbery with high stakes, was jailed for 13 years. Johnny Daniels supplied gang members with details of Mr. Simpson's home and told them where he believed money could be found. Anthony Neal of Niceview, Leeds, the recruiting sergeant, was jailed for 12 years. He enlisted the 3 Leeds men who brutally attacked Mr. Teddy Simpson at his house in Sticker Lane, Leicester Dyke. The 4 showed no emotion in the dock as Mr. Justice Langstaff said they plotted to rob an older and vulnerable man alone in his home. The gang hoped for a money and drugs haul in excess of £300,000. Johnny Daniels recruited DeCosta Daniel, Errol Witter, and Robert Cameron. Jailed for life in August last year for Teddy Simpson's murder and conspiracy to rob. Each is serving a minimum of 33 years and may never be released. The gang, armed with a shotgun and a wrench, broke into Teddy Simpson's and attacked him almost immediately. At least 4 blows were struck in the hallway, bringing him to his knees. They also used a frying pan in the ferocious attack that left the father of 4 semi-conscious and covered in blood. He was dragged into the lounge and a wet cushion cover put over his head in a torture technique similar to waterboarding. Teddy Simpson's friend Gary Falkert arrived at the house. He too was set upon and beaten. Johnny Daniels, Witter and Cameron then abducted the seriously injured Teddy Simpson. His body was found the next morning in the grounds of a former nursing home off Huddersfield Road, Wyke. He was bound and stripped to his underwear and socks. The bones of his face was shattered and his shoulder blades and ribs broken. No attempt was made to help Mr. Simpson. The gang were jailed for a total of 84 years. At a confiscation hearing in July 2011, the court found that Johnny Daniels, who said he had lost a lot of money through gambling and drugs, had benefited by more than £1 million from criminal conduct and ruled he had available assets of £500,000. The court ordered that a number of seizures be made of cash and money from properties, including one in Knowsley Street, Barker End, Bradford. 13 years had passed since the streets of Bradford last felt the presence of Johnny Daniels, the enigmatic figure whose name had become synonymous with fear and violence. But now, as he emerged from the confines of prison, a free man once more, the city held its breath in anticipation of what the future might hold. That's all for today's video, folks. If you found this story as riveting as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales of crime and justice. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.